It is approaching Christmas Day, 1782. In the tranquil heart of Xhosa Umuzi, a chief sits, watching his children. The setting sun paints long shadows across the African hills, rolling towards the distant sea, a place this leader rarely ventures, content in the ancestral lands that have sustained his family for generations. Suddenly, a strange figure emerges from the valley, disrupting the tranquility. The chief's warning sends his clan scrambling for cover. The man's legs, swollen and discolored, speak of scurvy's ravages. The tattered shawl fails to hide the weeping sores that mar his skin. His eyes, glazed and unfocused, stare into the distance. As the figure draws closer, one of his wives whispers, "Isiporo, ghost." The figure vanishes, only to reappear at the kraal's entrance. A young woman shrieks, abandoning her baby as she flees into the darkness of her hut. The disheveled stranger, a white man, picks up the crying infant and places her at the chief's feet. Despite the man's ghastly appearance, the chief's empathy prevails. He offers the stranger, William Habberley, milk and boiled meat, which the starving sailor devours. Habberley's relief, however, is short-lived. The sound of approaching hunters and their dogs fills him with dread. Thankfully, the hunters pay him little attention, and the chief leads him to the cattle kraal for milking. After another meal, Habberley is guided to a tree to rest. William Habberley's heart, battered but not broken, yearns to linger amidst his newfound companions. Yet, fate has other plans. The night after his rescue, nature calls. In his desperation, he seeks relief amongst the tribe's sacred cattle, an act that seals his fate. Dawn reveals his transgression, and he is banished, cast out like a stray dog. Despite his unceremonious expulsion, Habberley carries with him a newfound appreciation for life and a glimmer of hope rekindled by the kindness he received. His body, too, begins to mend. The agonizing swell of scurvy subsides, and his legs find their strength once more. The gentle landscape and cool air further ease his journey. Within hours, he encounters another group, their friendly faces and shared mealies a welcome sign. They beckon him towards their village, where yet another benevolent chief awaits. This leader's only concern is Habberley's inability to speak their language, a worry quickly overshadowed by his generous offering, a basket of milk given directly from the Nkosi's hand, an honor, a sign that perhaps his luck is turning. The next day, Habberley earns a place by the fire in a warm hut, his first proper shelter in what feels like an eternity. The young English sailor finds himself embraced by the friendly tribe for 2 weeks, their sustenance and support mending his battered body. But as his strength returns, so does his longing for home. When he gestures his need to continue his journey, his newfound family, in their overwhelming devotion, refuse to let him go. His problem has astonishingly transformed from a fight for survival to an excess of hospitality. Bound by their harmless possessiveness, he is left with no choice but to slip away under the cloak of darkness. With a heavy heart, he creeps from his hut, resuming his walk to the Cape, hoping to find continued assistance in this seemingly friendly nation. Two days of wandering lead Habberley to a small village, where he offers his tattered shawl to the chief's wife. His simple acts of generosity is met with such overwhelming gratitude that escape seems, once again, impossible. He finds himself swept up in the festivities of a nearby kraal, where a slaughtered bullock provides a feast. Under the cover of darkness, with a full belly and a heavy heart, he slips away once more. The next day, in yet another kraal, he stumbles upon a sight that mirrors his own hardship, another haggard, hairy white man in rags. It is Tom Lewis, and his story echoes Habberley's own. A desperate struggle for survival, a warm welcome from the locals, and tranquil days carved out amidst a foreign culture. Lewis has become a firewood gatherer and a calf tender, finding solace in the simplicity of his adopted Xhosa life. Lewis also shares a tale of two Italians, Bianco and Pero, whose fate had taken a vastly different turn since heading out on their own at the Umzimvubu. They had stumbled upon a chief with an infected leg and, using a traditional Italian remedy, cured him. Their reward was a hero's welcome at every village they passed through, a stark contrast to the harsh realities faced by most survivors. It is a tale that sparks reflection on the Grosvenor's captain's ignorance towards the indigenous people and ignites a flicker of hope in Habberley's heart. Eager to connect with his fellow castaways, Habberley follows Lewis to a nearby kraal where the Italians are staying. The four castaways share stories and camaraderie for a few weeks, until the Italians decide to continue their journey towards the Cape. Though tempted, Habberley is swayed by Lewis's contentment with the Xhosa way of life and decides to stay. Lewis's intuition proves correct. 3 weeks later, a near-dead Bianco returns alone, his companion Pero swallowed by the endless sands of the coastal desert. After a month with the friendly tribe, the castaways are summoned to Lewis's kraal. Expecting to meet more survivors, they are astonished to find 3 men with oxen laden with supplies. These are not the Xhosa they knew, but wear wool coats, and one smokes a Dutch pipe. They are Khoi from the Cape, heading there, and offer the castaways passage. Lewis hesitates, but the allure of home comforts is irresistible. With a heavy heart, Habberley, Lewis, and Bianco bid farewell to the tribe that had shown them such kindness. The Khoi set a brisk pace, and for 2 days they journey inland, skirting the desert that had claimed so many lives. The Khoi, resourceful and skilled, forage for honey, hunt antelope, and even use a whistling technique to ward off lions. With each passing day, the Europeans' trust in their guides grows. Then, on a hazy morning of January 14th, a tremor of something new begins to take shape. The distant horizon, usually a seamless blend of sky and grassland, begins to resolve itself into a multitude of forms. Slowly, details emerge. The lumbering silhouettes of wagons, the lowing murmur of cattle carried on the faint breeze, and a sight that sends a jolt of both terror and exhilaration through the small band of survivors, the unmistakable glint of firearms catching the harsh sunlight. A palpable wave of fear washes over them, yet, beneath this fear, a fragile seed of desperate hope begins to sprout. Could it be? Is it possible that their ordeal is finally nearing its end? They squint, their eyes straining against the glare, their hearts pounding with a frantic rhythm. The approaching group draws closer, and the distance narrows. Individual figures begin to detach themselves from the mass. Anxious whispers ripple through the survivors. Then, a surge of disbelief and overwhelming relief. Amongst the advancing crowd, unmistakable even at this distance, are 2 faces etched in their memories, De Lasso and Evans. Fellow sufferers, men who have shared the horror of the Grosvenor's demise and the subsequent desperate fight for life. They have been found. Someone, somewhere, has not forgotten them. Their agonizing march is over. The warm biscuits and sweet wine offer much-needed comfort to these exhausted survivors. As they eat and drink, Evans recounts their recent ordeal. A month prior, his group of 6 had been found at the Swartskorps River and then carried by oxwagon to the Dutch settlement of Swellendam. News of their desperate situation travels swiftly to Joachim von Plettenberg, the governor of the Cape. Moved by their suffering, he immediately organized a rescue. A commando, under the leadership of Helgard Muller, set out to comb the coastline for any others who might still be alive. 100 Dutch farmers with 47 wagons, heavily loaded with provisions, accompanied by 170 koi. Some of the koi were sent ahead as messengers, their task to spread word of the commando's approach to the scattered settlements. It was these very messengers who encountered Habberley, Lewis, and Bianco. De Lasso and Evans, their own harrowing experience still vivid, stepped forward selflessly as guides. They retraced their journey, leading the commando back through the unforgiving terrain. Remarkably, this act of rescue unfolded against the brutal backdrop of war. Holland and England were locked in the fierce grip of the Fourth Anglo-Dutch War, technically casting these survivors as enemy combatants. Yet, their story transcended this bitter conflict, igniting a wave of profound sympathy that washed away any political animosity. In this moment, humanity triumphed over the divisions of nations. Muller is overjoyed to have found survivors and eagerly asks them to join his convoy north. But the weary castaways have endured enough hardship. They refuse, their bodies and spirits longing for the comforts of the Cape. Muller, though disappointed, understands their plight and arranges for a small convoy to escort them back to the Cape. Young William Habberley, with the wisdom earned through suffering, openly doubts the success of Muller's northward journey. The rivers and forests will be impassable, he warns, but Muller dismisses his concerns with a laugh. Habberley can't help but see the parallel between Muller's laughter and the dismissive response of third mate Thomas Beale when warned of land sighted from the Grosvenor's foremast. As fate would have it, Habberley's concerns prove true. Muller's mission encounters insurmountable challenges as they cross the Kai River. The harsh terrain forces them to abandon their wagons and oxen, venturing further on horseback into the wild, uncharted territory. Ultimately, the mission is abandoned a mere 50 kilometers south of the Grosvenor's wreck, and the commando reluctantly turns back towards the Cape. Despite the setback, they have managed to rescue 8 Lascars and 2 servants, who would later shed light on the fate of the captain's party, including the Xhosas. By July 1783, a mere 9 Europeans, 8 Lascars, and 2 servants managed to reach the outpost at the Cape of Good Hope, present-day Cape Town. They wait there, weary and battered, for passage home. But the allure of Africa has already claimed one heart. Irishman Jeremiah Evans, captivated by the land, chooses to stay. He petitions the governor for land and spends the rest of his days as a farmer on the frontier and a civil spokesperson for the plight of the region's indigenous people. In an unimaginably cruel twist, tragedy strikes again for the 8 Lascars and 2 servants who embark home on the Nicobar, bound for Bengal. The ship strikes a shallow reef east of Cape Agulhas. 5 Lascars and 1 maid drown. Only 4 survivors return to the Cape on a salvage ship, eventually making their way back to India. Of the 140 souls who set sail from Trincomalee on the Grosvenor on June 13, 1782, only 8 European sailors, 9 if you count Evans, 3 Lascars and 1 servant ever see home again. None of the Europeans are even 30 years old. John Warmington, the eldest, is 29, De Lasso 28, Lewis is 24. Habberley, Hines and Bianco are all 21. Jeremiah Evans is only 18, Barney Leary 17, and Robert Price, Coxon's servant, a mere 14 years old. They return home in separate groups aboard Danish and Dutch ships. Lewis, Warmington and Leary have their accounts recorded by the Secretary to the East India Company in London. Hines shares his story with a writer named George Carter, his cabin mate on another voyage to India. But the most precious account is William Habberley's. His remarkable memory allows him to pen a daily journal, published a year after his return to England.
We're incredibly grateful to have a sponsor for this season of More Than a Story, and not just any sponsor, but one deeply connected to the very tale we're telling. Lambazi Lodge is supporting the show this season, and we're genuinely thrilled to introduce them to you. Explore the untamed wild coast and come away with unforgettable memories of the warm hospitality, the beautiful surroundings, and the sense of peace that lingers long after you leave. Just a short walk from the tunnel where treasure hunters once searched for the Grosvenor's lost riches, Lambazi Lodge offers a front row seat to history. But it's more than a historical landmark. It's the perfect base for families, fishermen, hikers, and adventurers looking to explore the untamed beauty of the wild coast. To plan your own escape, visit lambazilodge.com and use the promo code MoreThanAStory10 to get 10% off your booking during designated dates.
A century passed and the Grosvenor's tragic tale faded into memory, but whispers of its fabled cargo refused to be silenced. Legends arose, painting a vivid picture of a golden throne, adorned with the tears of the earth and fit for a king. The peacock throne of Shah Jahan, creator of the Taj Mahal, lost to the depths with the Grosvenor. These tales, spun from the threads of hope and greed, ignited a frenzy that would last for over a century. Fortune hunters and thrill seekers, their hearts filled with dreams of untold riches, flocked to the wreck site. Among them was Sidney Turner, a Durban entrepreneur with a knack for the outrageous. Turner, in a stroke of cunning, secured a vast tract of land from the Pondo chief in 1880, under the pretense of establishing a port. Port Grosvenor, as it was christened, became the base for his audacious treasure hunt. Dynamite blasts echoed through the air as Turner waged war against the elements, attempting to dam the ocean itself. But the wild coast sea, unyielding and unforgiving, mocked his efforts, smashing his flimsy wall to smithereens. Defeated but not deterred, Turner salvaged what he could, a handful of gold coins, Venetian ducats, and 9 cannons, now silent relics in a Durban museum. His grand port, a monument to his ambition, was reclaimed by the Pondo chief, fading into obscurity within a few short years. The allure of the Peacock throne continued to cast its spell. In the early 1900s, the Grosvenor Bullion Syndicate Limited, with the illustrious Sir Arthur Conan Doyle amongst its members, embarked on a daring escapade. Their plan? To tunnel beneath the treacherous rocks and unearth the ship's secrets. But the sea, it seemed, guarded its treasures jealously, and the tunnel collapsed, leaving the adventurers empty-handed. Throughout the 20th century, the Grosvenor's legend fueled the dreams of countless salvage companies, drawing investors with promises of unimaginable wealth. Even local tribesmen added their own twist to the tale, whispering of a treasure chest hidden in the dunes by desperate sailors. But these were mere shadows, flickering in the darkness of speculation. Finally, in the year 2000, the Grosvenor's watery tomb was discovered, not by fortune hunters or dreamers, but by a team of Cape Town archaeologists and Hungarian divers. The wreck, ravaged by time and buried deep beneath the sand, yielded over 5,000 artifacts, a window into a bygone era. Among them, a gold chest brace bearing the initials CN, a poignant reminder of the lawyer Charles Newman and the human cost of the tragedy. Gold and silver coins were found, but the legendary peacock throne and the mountains of treasure remained elusive, confined to the realm of myth. The Grosvenor's true treasure lay not in its riches, but in the stories it whispered, tales of survival, despair, and the enduring power of hope. The Grosvenor's tragic tale had been etched into history, but amidst the grim accounts of survival and despair, a moving question lingered. What became of the ship's most vulnerable passengers? Lydia Logie, heavy with child, Mary Jose, and their 2-year-old daughter, Frances, who had been abandoned by their companions, left to fend for themselves in a harsh and unfamiliar land. Their fate remained shrouded in mystery, a haunting footnote to the Grosvenor's disaster. Years later, whispers of hope emerged. In 1791, rumours reached the Cape of 3 white women living among the Pondo people, 1,000 kilometres up the coast. A rescue mission was launched, and to their astonishment, they discovered the women were indeed European, shipwrecked years before, and now fully integrated into the tribe, with children of their own. The eldest woman, unable to speak English, had not only children but grandchildren with distinctly European features. When offered a return to civilization, the women agreed only if their entire extended family, some 400 tribesmen, could accompany them. The rescuers, realizing the impossibility of the request, departed with heavy hearts, leaving the women to their chosen lives. The mystery deepened in 1850 when William Baisley, a trader with the Pondo, encountered a very old white woman living as a native. She recounted being shipwrecked as a young girl and raised among Europeans within the Amachoman tribe. She spoke of a tranquil life until Zulu raids forced them to flee. Though she had no memory of the wreck, her mother, an English woman who died shortly after, had told her about it. The woman had been taken in by an elderly white woman, European in feature, but native in every other way. Speculation arose that this adopted mother was Bessie, the revered queen of the Amachoman, and the girl was none other than Frances Jose, the 2-year-old daughter of William and Mary, abandoned on that fateful day. The Grosvenor's tragic legacy, while undeniably marked by loss and hardship, is also a tapestry woven with threads of resilience, adaptation, and unexpected human connection. The hidden narratives of its survivors, those who may have found solace and belonging in the most unimaginable of circumstances, serves as a touching reminder that strength and vulnerability are not always what they seem. Their stories, a testament to the complexities of survival and the unpredictable nature of fate, challenges us to reconsider our assumptions and to recognize the potential for resilience and adaptation in the face of extreme adversity. It is in these stories, hidden within the broader historical context and unique to this beautifully complex continent, that we find a deeper understanding of the human spirit's capacity to endure, adapt, and ultimately to transcend even the most profound tragedy. As we bring this story to a close, one more anecdote demands our attention: the tale of John Bryan. It is perhaps his story that best encapsulates the essence of every individual who played a part. A story of hope, adaptation, kindness, and ultimately, tragedy. Almost half a century after the wreck, Bryan's surviving son recounted his father's story to an English trader. This raises a compelling question: how many more such tales of survival and hardship remain, hidden within the oral traditions of the people who lived along the paths the Grosvenor survivors walked? It is the day after the Grosvenor's wreck. John Bryan stumbles away from the splintered remains of the ship, limping uphill and clutching scavenged metal and a chisel. His injured leg presents him with a choice: stay with the group, becoming a burden on their desperate march, or strike out alone. He confides in Hines, another sailor, sharing his plan to seek refuge with the Pondo people, hoping that trinkets and carved wooden toys will win over the children. Reaching a wooded area on the outskirts of a settlement, Bryan hesitates. Instead of immediately approaching, he builds a small shelter. This becomes his sanctuary, a base for his scavenging trips back to the wreck. He gathers what he can: a flint, some flour, a little pork, small treasures against the gnawing hunger. Days turn into a silent passage of time. One day, drawn by the sound of water, he follows a stream towards the beach. There, he encounters a small group of Pondo men, heading towards the debris of the Grosvenor. Driven by desperation, Bryan speaks to them. Those words are meaningless. But they sense no malice, no threat. And so, Bryan follows them back to their village. Welcomed into the chief's great house, Bryan's carved toys delight the children. He is given a simple hut, shared with two of the chief's sons. The scorched earth around the village, a ritual for new growth, is a chilling reminder. These were the fires Shaw saw before the wreck. Bryan's life changes. He learns the rhythms of the tribe. Women toil in the fields, men hunt. In idle hours, they brew beer and smoke cannabis, the herb plentiful in the land. One day, he joins a hunt. A primal fear grips him as they corner a massive hippopotamus and her calf. The Pondo warriors, however, stand their ground, utterly fearless. The ensuing chaos is a brutal ballet of blood and roars. One warrior falls, but the great beast is slain. That night, Bryan tastes hippo flesh, sharing the meal with his new tribe. Life finds a new pace. Harvest bring maize, squash, and sorghum beer. Bryan's eye falls on Sipho, a young woman. Her response to his advances is encouraging, but tradition holds firm. Marriage requires lobola, a bride price paid in cattle. Bryan has none. Undeterred, he returns to the sea, diving into the wreck. He finds no trace of the rumored gold coins, but he discovers something far more valuable: iron ballast. Back at his hut, he uses his skill and salvaged metal to forge tools, spearheads, hoes. The woman's labor in the fields is eased by his work, and Bryan, now known as Umbeti, the beater, a name that speaks of his forge, is paid in cattle. Lobola is secured, and he and Sipho are wed, their own homestead rising near the chiefs. Bryan's transformation deepens. His skin darkens under the African sun, his hair grows matted. His days are filled with cattle and the forge, Sipho's with the fields. Evenings are for beer with the chief's sons, or quiet pipes of the sweet herb. A daughter, Mambeti, is born. Watching European ships pass, Bryan feels gratitude. He has found peace, but it is fragile. Invaders from the north, likely Zulu warriors, shatter it all. Sipho, pregnant with their second child, is taken, along with his precious cattle. Leaving his home, Bryan takes Mambeti north, searching desperately. Months bleed into a year, the search yielding nothing. Reaching the Umzumkulu River, he builds a raft, hoping to find Sipho further upstream. But the river's treacherous rocks make passage impossible. He makes the heartbreaking decision to leave Mambeti with the Amaxolo people, venturing inland alone in his relentless search. Word soon reaches them, Umbeti is dead. Years later, Mambeti, too, will meet a brutal end in Zulu raids. Sipho's fate remains a mystery, but she bears a son who, decades later, will recount his father's remarkable story to an Englishman named Henry Flynn, a man who spent much of his life living among the Pondo and the Zulu. John Bryan died around 1795, some 13 years after leaving the other survivors of the Grosvenor. He sought only survival, but in this unexpected land, he found a life, a family, a home. That's it for this season of More Than a Story. I want to say a huge thank you to all who have tuned in so far. It's been a great personal journey for me, and one that I'm glad my wife convinced me to pursue. To all who have sent positive messages and comments, it has been truly appreciated from my end. The response to this project has been overwhelming. Thank you to you all. Thanks again to Lambazi Lodge and Active Escapes for their support this season. Please take a look at their websites in the show notes. I dedicate this story to two dear friends lost suddenly and unexpectedly during this season's production, both influencing its writing. To Sharon, a conservation leader and rhino protection inspiration, who read The Sunburned Queen before her sudden passing. Sharon was much like Bessie herself, fearless, compassionate, and a person whose legacy will endure. And to Sibonelo, my great friend and mentor, thank you for teaching me what it means to be African and helping me understand our country's cultural differences. Your lessons, views, and wisdom will always stay with me. Uyohlale ukunjulwa, lala ngokuthula mfowethu. We will be back with more stories. I'm planning to release singular story episodes every 2 weeks. Given that it took me 5 years to write the Grosvenor story, I figured 2 weeks should be enough time to write the others. Next episode, we venture to Ethiopia to unpack the incredible events of 1896, where on one day, the world saw what power looked like when it came from the highlands of Africa.